When I see the number of names that we have here in the candles, I realize the hunger we have that our loved ones not ever be forgotten. Because every name that we read today is a part of who we are today. You know, sometimes in my journey of self-importance and being very preoccupied with myself, I can forget easily how important the church is to each one of you. And not just the building, but the message that we try to share with you. Because despite our imperfections, our church is an anchor. I hope it's one place where no matter what's going on in your life or in the world, you can come and at least feel safe, feel a word of hope, give you the strength to walk out the door and face another day. And even if you disappear for a while, which many of you do, it's a safe place to come back to without condition, because that's who we are. I don't mean to bore you with reminiscing, but as I get older, that's about all I do. It was February of 1974 that a gentleman named Lee Harbison drove down to Hyde Park, where I went to school, and picked me up and drove me here to interview for being the pastor of All Saints. And I'm not sure if Lee is, I know Lee's wife passed away, but Lee and maybe some of his kids might be watching, and if you are, I want to thank you for the seeds that you planted years ago. Anyway, I came into the church, and Charter Hall was the sanctuary, and what is now the nursery was our fellowship room, and I sat at a couple aging tables, and there was like 4 buckets because the roof was leaking. And on that committee was Mark and Lori Nussel. And I know Mark and Lori are watching. And Mark, we're praying for you because Mark has gone through some medical stuff, and we just want you to get better and come back. But just thank you for, well, it depends on who you are if you want to thank you for hiring me all those years ago. But there was also on the committee a volunteer fireman named George Hoffman. And George has passed away, and one of these candles are from him. And his daughters were here at the early service. And so George was sitting at the table. He was in his 40s back then, and he was wearing his black leather volunteer fireman's jacket. And in the middle of the interview, which was very awkward, he gets up, and he looks at me, and he says, you know, we contacted the bishop's office, and we said we want somebody with experience, and now we're stuck with a 25-year-old student. And he said, you young whippersnapper, if you think you're going to come here and be here for 2 years and get your feet wet and then move on to someplace else, you can get out of here right now. And the people, and they go, oh, George. All he did was say what everybody else was thinking, but that's what he did. So, George, I hope you're happy. 46 years later, you're still stuck with me. But back then, we struggled. I mean, we had leaky roofs and low attendance and days when the church couldn't afford to pay us and unpaid bills. But when you struggle, you discover inside your soul what the church is all about. And it's not just a building, it's a spirit. It's about what you stand for. And here we are today, you know, not too far from our 60th anniversary, almost 47 years since that firefighter challenged me, but our struggle is different. Because in many ways, the world is trying to keep us apart. And God only knows that the world is going to try to close us down again. But in the middle of all that, I think over the past 8 months, we've discovered and rediscovered who we are. Because the church is the church, and the church is you. When you walk out the door and you go back to work and take care of people that depend on you, you become the church in the way you walk and the way you live. And you're going to carry All Saints Church with you into Michigan because you're going to be the church up there. And we're probably more together than ever because we care about what we have. And these candles remind us of the power and beauty when God's Spirit and the human spirit come together. I go out for a walk in the morning, and I like going out when it's still dark and the sun rises just around the corner. And you walk up and down the street, and you see the different houses, and you see some kitchen lights on, and you see some people going to work. And like I mentioned in my thought the other day, I'm reminded that we share this planet together. And every person, every house, every car, every pickup truck, they're going somewhere. They're doing something. They're trying to find their purpose. And then somebody sent me a video which said that despite all the stuff that has been taken away from us, we still have the majesty of God's creation. And every single day, God invites us to be the guest in his universe. Each one of us, no matter who we are and what we are a guest of God's creation. Whether it's somebody's candle here who was 100 years old, or little Beckett's candle when he was here for only 8 months. Some are guests for a long time, and some are here only for just a short chunk of time. But like little Beckett, and of course people like George Hoffman, every single guest, every one of us matters in this world. Each one of us has a place, and each one of us has a purpose. Because when you're a guest in somebody's house, when you're a guest in somebody else's world, you treat that person and that house and that part of the world with deep, deep respect. And so when we're a guest of the universe, our calling is to walk with kindness and respect unto everybody. When you're a guest of the universe, you shouldn't have to board up your plate of business because you're afraid of violence that's going to happen to what's going to go on. When you're a guest, we are called to live in peace and understanding and listening to each other. We shouldn't have to worry about being different or unique or what we stand for. Because when we are a guest, we're invited to live with the power of kindness at the very heart and soul of who we are. I spend a lot of time looking at the sunrise this morning because the sunrise reminds me and calls us to come together. The sunrise calls us to put our divisions aside and hold on to what we have in common. And let the words and the spirit of a humble carpenter come alive in the way you and I treat each other every single day. That's the power and the beauty of what we stand for. If you're able to, please rise for the creed.